You will never experience anything more violent than ejecting out of a fighter jet aircraft. There's nothing on the planet that comes even close. The most violent experience of your life, period.
A seriously wounded U.S. Air Force colonel was rescued after ejecting from his shot-down fighter jet over Iran. Despite his injuries, the F-15E weapons officer evaded capture for 36 hours behind enemy lines after punching out. What many people don't realize is that ejection can be a shockingly violent and even deadly procedure that wreaks havoc on the body, potentially shrinking a pilot's height by up to 2 inches. But why is ejecting from a fighter jet so traumatic? We spoke to a former Top Gun pilot to break it down.
My name is Matthew Buckley. My call sign is Whiz. I flew the F-18 Hornet for the United States Navy for about 15 years. Graduated from the Navy Fighter Weapons School adversary course, which most people know as Top Gun. You're always worried about the condition of an aviator or an air crew if they had to eject, because ejecting is one of the most violent experiences a body can go through. It's literally a choice between death and pulling the yellow and black ejection handles between your legs. So it's a pretty stark choice, either die or eject. And in ejection, you go from zero, just sitting here in a chair, to an instantaneous 10 to 20 Gs of force. And that's the blink of an eye. When you pull the handle, in the blink of an eye, about a second to a second and a half, the canopy goes, the seat fires, and you're hanging in your parachute. So it's an incredibly violent experience. So if you're uninjured from the ejection, now you have to land. And this is going to surprise a lot of folks. We don't do any parachute training. A lot of people think that, oh yeah, if you're a fighter pilot, you must do some parachute training. Zero. So it sounds like either this Wizzo, the weapons system officer, was injured in the ejection or on the landing. Maybe it was on the landing because this was a pretty rocky and mountainous terrain, but it sounds like it didn't slow him down, because he evaded capture by navigating to the top of a 7,000-foot peak and then establishing contact with friendly forces.
While life-saving, the lightning-fast process of ejecting is inherently brutal. In order for pilots to make it out of a doomed aircraft, they have to vertically clear the jet, which can easily be traveling at a few hundred miles per hour. In order for that to happen, the passenger and its seat are propelled upwards using an explosive catapult guided by a set of rails at breakneck speed. This initial explosion, which can knock pilots unconscious, is followed by a rocket underneath the seat that propels it an additional 100 feet or so. Altogether, those two processes take only half a second, which can cause spinal compression so severe that it leaves pilots 1 to 2 inches shorter in height.
A lot of guys have spinal cord injuries. It's a compression. I mean, literally you go 0 to 10 to 20 Gs instantaneously. If you've seen any like dogfighting videos of pulling Gs, I would fight the jet on the edge of consciousness, right? Pulling 8 or 9 Gs. That's hell. Now double that. And it's extremely violent. The human body is not designed, first of all, to pull Gs, let alone to eject out of an aircraft. So yeah, it's a very violent experience.
And all of that's if everything has gone right. If a passenger isn't positioned nearly perfectly while ejecting, the injury sustained could be life-altering.
The other thing that's pretty violent is you're going from sitting right here, no wind at all, to potentially 300, 400, 500 miles an hour of wind blast. So, if you've been driving down the highway, doing 80, 90, breaking the law, and you put your hand out the window, it almost gets ripped back, right? So if you're not in a good body position when you eject, if your arm's hanging out a little bit, you might have what we call a flail injury. Your arms might just get ripped out of their sockets type of thing if you're not in a good body position. I have a close friend of mine who survived the fastest F-18 ejection. He was almost supersonic. It was like 695 miles per hour. And it would be quicker to tell you what didn't break as opposed to what broke, just like everything broke. So it's a very violent experience, from the ejection itself to going into the wind blast to now having to land in enemy territory. I mean, there's almost an infinite number of things that can go wrong. I remember switching from wearing a metallic band to a leather band when I started flying fighters. Why? Because there was a guy flying a Prowler who was out of position, and they pulled the ejection handle and his metal watch band got caught on the canopy. And when he was hanging in his parachute, he went to inflate his raft. You pull on these two tabs and only one side opened up. He's like, why isn't this other tab opening? And he looked down and his hand had been sheathed off. And it's interesting because the military defines a successful ejection as pilot pulls the ejection handle, canopy fires, rocket fires, parachute opens. What did I name? You live. So the definition of a successful ejection to the military is all that stuff worked. What happened to the pilot is in God's hands. So there are so many things that can go wrong during this. Like I said, pulling the ejection handles, it's either that or death. And, I'm going to choose the ejection handles and take my chances.